What's up, guys? So I know we're supposed to be doing Supra updates, working on the Supra and everything, but I had a buddy at work who bought an SRT4 Neon, and he's having some issues. One being, when he noticed the clutch was slipping under boost, so he ended up buying a new clutch and asked me if I could put it in for him. So I guess that's what this video is going to be about. We're going to go ahead and tear the transmission out of this Neon and put a new clutch in. First, we're going to go ahead, get some air, and get these lugs off. I don't know if it's still got air in the lines or not, because it was leaking. I got a little bit. Okay, so we got that off. Now we're going to have to pull the axles. I think I could probably get away with pulling the axle on this side and just popping the other one out when I pull the trans. Not 100% sure, but I think you can do that on these. So let's get some tools and figure out how we're going to drop this trans. So let's go ahead and pull all this stuff on the top end off. Get the battery out and get all this other stuff out of the way. I know you're supposed to pull negative first, but we're going to pull positive first just because I went to it first. Pull negative off. Pull this little bungee cord off. And his battery's not bolted down, so we'll go ahead and pull that out of the way. Set it over here. Let's see, we're going to need a stubby flathead, and we'll pull this intake off. Maybe we'll do this. We'll have to do it this way. That loosened up enough. Pull that breather off. Pull that off. And there's the intake. Now, that's not even on there. Got a little oil in there. That's why you always want to make sure you run a catch can. Granted, he's got a catch can right here, but he doesn't have it plumbed right. He's still getting crankcase ventilation from here and sucking it through the intake. So he's still filling his turbocharger, his hard piping, his intercooler, his throttle body, his intake, everything. He's just filling full of oil fumes because he's still running a line to the intake off this crankcase vent tube, which he should be running to like right here or something to go into the catch cam. So that's possibly one thing I'm going to address and take care of. Looks like his battery tray is not even bolted down. We'll pull that out. And then we'll take a look at this mess he's got down here. So, like I said, we're doing the clutch in this car, but he also provided hard motor mounts. So, while I'm doing this, I'm going to throw the hard motor mounts in for him. If I can get in the dang thing. Oh, I pulled the battery. That's not going to work. Why the hell does this key not work on this trunk? So how am I going to get in the trunk? Let's go through the back. Pull this. And I believe his motor mounts are right here. He's got his hard motor mounts. And his clutch should be right here. Which weighs a ton and is honestly like no clutch I've ever seen before. So there's his clutch. And then his throwout's in there too. I'm gonna have to climb in there and figure out where that throwout went. Put that foam down, protect everything. I believe that's the throwout right there. So usually you'll have like a pilot bearing and stuff like that too. But like I said, I've never seen a clutch set up like this. You've got your pressure plate, your disc, and what would be, I guess, your flywheel. But if you notice, there's no flywheel, there's no teeth. So it looks like the flywheel portion stays in the car, and then you just bolt this up like you would, I guess, a torque converter, and that's the clutch setup. Never seen anything like that. And like I said, there's no pilot bearing. It goes straight through to this and just rides in there. And from what I've seen, that's one thing that will break on these cars, is because it doesn't sit in an actual pilot bearing in the crank. It just sits in this. You can get too much stress on that input shaft and they'll break under high horsepower applications. So I'm going to go ahead and try to get more of this stuff undone, and I'll get back with you guys when I get a little bit further into it. What's up, guys? So we got axle out over here, axle out over here, we got the transmission out, we have installed the new throwout bearing, putting the clutch on right now. Just got the 4 bolts on, we're about to tighten those up. Had to fight a bunch of things. A bunch of the bolts were swapped. There was different sizes. After we get this on, we'll go ahead and we'll tackle these motor mounts, and then hopefully go take it for a test drive. What's up, guys? So I ended up finishing the neon. Didn't really record as much as I wanted to, finishing everything up. It was a lot harder getting everything out, getting everything back in, getting everything lined up. Got it all finished. Went and lined the slave, put the slave on, and then was going to do a test fire, pushed in the clutch, and the clutch master rod that attaches to the pedal broke. And then when I was looking at it, it was bent, it was rusted, so I told the guy he had to get a new one. He got a new one, and we changed that out in the front yard. But everything worked out good. He wasn't too happy with the solid motor mounts. He didn't like the vibration and stuff. But I told him that's just sort of what people do with these cars to keep the flex out, so you're putting more power to the road, less likely to break, because these are bad for breaking. Motor mount off. You probably can't see it at all, but down here there's a motor mount that mounts to the front of the block, and they're bad for when the engine moves, when you give it throttle or whatever. It'll actually break all the what do you call it, the threads or whatever. It'll split the block open, so the threads will be completely open. You can't bolt anything to it anymore. So I told them, from what I've seen on all the forums and what I've seen from all the big power cars, they all use solid motor mounts to keep everything from moving. That keeps your axles from moving. That keeps your diff from coming up and putting strain on everything else. It's just a little bit safer to do if you're going to drive the car hard. So, but I got him all buttoned up and everything. Was searching through Facebook on one of my pages that I go to, and a guy was like, hey, does anyone have a SRT4 neon manifold, factory one? And I was like, well, I'm thinking about upgrading, so technically I have one on the car, but I don't have one to replace it yet. So we agreed on a price, and I ended up taking mine off. He needed one because his was cracked, and I was like, well, mine holds boost. I can't tell you whether or not it's cracked or not because they crack on the insides. But after fighting for about an hour and a half to 2 hours, I finally got it off. And you can see there's cracks right there, and there's a crack right there. So they're really common for cracking from everything I've seen. And I plan on upgrading anyway to like a full stainless, or I don't know. I'm just a whole different setup basically. It's going to be a bigger turbo. Everything is going to be completely different. So that sort of jump started what's going on with the Neon right now. It's sitting here. The turbo's still mounted up and everything. And I can technically still start the car if I need to pull it out of the garage to get the lawnmower, whatever I want to get out. So that's where we are on that. His car's done. He's driving it. My car's right now in pieces. Supra's still in pieces. Finally got the engine on the engine stand. I've got the new crank, all the rods with the new rod, all the pistons and everything at the machine shop. They're going to balance, rotate, and polish it. And then I also, when I was looking for a crank, I kept getting people commenting on my post that there's two different cranks, which I never knew. I was always under the assumption that all the cranks were the same and all the heads were the same. Granted, the cams were different or whatever, but I guess I was wrong. There's actually two styles of cranks came with these cars. There's one, if you see there's these bob weights, counter from where the rod would attach. Well, on cylinder 2, there is not a bob weight, and on cylinder 5, there is not a bob weight. So that would make this crank actually a 6M crank. I don't know why they did that, because they don't have a 6M engine. You either have, I think, a 5M or a 7M. But the earlier models came with what was a 6M crank. So I'm guessing when this thing was built, when I first had it, it probably had the normal 7M crank with bob weights on all the rod journals. And this one didn't. When I did the teardown and put this crank in and rebuilt it, I noticed I was getting vibrations and stuff, and I'm guessing that's probably what it was. It was balanced for full bob weights all the way through, and I was running one that wasn't weighted all the way through. So I figured to be on the safe side, we'll send everything to the machine shop, get everything looked at, get everything weighted, and polish it all up, make it all good. So when I drop it in, I know I should be sitting in a better situation. We're still going to go with the ATI dampener. Other than that, I don't know if I'm going to change much. I did hear you should change these crossover tubes because this banjo right here causes restrictions. So if you upgrade it to one that doesn't have restrictions, it's just a straight 90 that comes off, it's supposed to help oil flow and everything like that. So I might end up doing that. But as for everything else, it should be pretty good. I just really want to get it back together and then hopefully get it on a dyno and get it properly tuned and maybe give you guys some numbers. Everyone wants to see numbers. Everyone wants to know what numbers are, but I'm not too worried about that. I mean, I do want to see how much it makes, but I know it makes a lot more than it ever made before. So I just want to make sure it's tuned properly so I can beat on it and not worry, is my tune right? Am I going to blow something up? The engine setup I had in it was perfectly fine. There was nothing wrong with it. Everything that happened to this engine to now was all my fault. I shouldn't have been pushing 30 pounds of boost on pump gas at like 20 plus degrees timing. That was dumb on my part. The engine held everything, but the head gasket didn't. And then when I put it all back together, I should have waited to make sure the car was set up right. It wouldn't have spun a bearing if I didn't try clutch starting it going 120 miles an hour. Because it went from 0 RPM to 3,500, 4,000, whatever RPM. It jumped up super fast with no oil pressure. So it was not the engine's fault that it spun a bearing. People diss these engines all the time, saying that they're garbage, they have so many flaws or whatever. I've never had a real mechanical issue with this engine until I caused one from my stupidity. So, going back together, hopefully I will think a little bit more before I do stuff and not make those stupid little mistakes. But more than likely I will. And then we'll have to start over from scratch, tear it down, rebuild it again. So that's going to probably end this video. I was really hoping to have some parts for the 7M, get it tore down a little bit more. I was hoping I would have got more putting the clutch in, but it was such a hectic job. It took me like 2 or 3 days to finally get it finished. Had some buddies come over and they helped me. But I think that's pretty much going to end it. Hopefully next video we'll have some 7M parts and we'll start getting this beast back together. See you guys in the next one.